So this is, just to be clear, you are going to speak with your mouth closed.
I'm going to speak with my mouth closed. If you can imagine, my cheeks puffed out like a pufferfish. But this is me without my lips moving. Okay.
All right.
My name is Hayley Atwell, and you're watching the Cold Fire on Second Size, and I can't get out.
That's unbelievable. That's the greatest thing that I've ever seen in my life. We're going to cancel the show after this because it's not going to get any better than that.
You get a rasa? Because I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Hayley Atwell starred in a major superhero franchise, but acknowledges she's a mere mortal. I'm Tom Power. Welcome to Q.
I love what I do. I feel very lucky. Every time I get a job, I'm kind of amazed that I've gotten another job.
You're amazed?
Well, yeah.
Plus, A Tribe Called Red. They've been on the cutting edge of a cultural movement happening across Canada right now, and they're here with their new record, We Are the Hallucination.
I'm wondering, Bear, what does this mean to you personally?
Personally, it's hope. It's a huge amount of hope.
And Barry Jenkins. His film Moonlight was the toast of the festival circuit this year, and some are saying it may even win an Oscar. He joins me to talk about how his film changes the way we think about black masculinity.
What, man? Come on, you just drove down here? Yeah.
What I would hope is if people are walking down the street and you see a guy with a mouth full of grills, instead of just seeing that guy and judging him, oh, he came from somewhere. There's a story.
And Sam Roberts will be here to talk about his latest record, Terraform, in our brand spanking new music studio. All of this is happening right now on Q. When I spoke to actor Hayley Atwell, I learned a couple of things. First, what the British word lorry means.
What's a lorry?
A lorry is a truck.
A truck. I thought a lorry was a train.
Second, I learned exceptionally talented artists don't always see themselves that way. Hayley Atwell's talent is obvious to me, whether she's acting on stage, she's in movies, she's on television. You may know her as Agent Carter in Captain America, in the TV show Agent Carter. But her new show is a different kind of nail-biter. It's a legal drama called Conviction. Here's our conversation.
First, funny story. Last night, I was busted for cocaine possession. Wallace dropped the charges in exchange for me taking this job. Working these pointless cases with you people, that's my prison.
So, Hayley, you play a character named Hayes Morrison, daughter of the former president. Her mom's running for the Senate. A little bit of real life in there as well. She gets busted for coke possession. She's a bit of a wild child. She has this kind of tumultuous past. Kicked out of her university teaching job for sleeping with students. This is not what we'd call a... which is true, it happened.
Yeah, it's true.
This is not a one-dimensional character. This isn't just an easy
No.
kind of television role where you play one particular kind of person.
Yeah.
And, so when you first read this role, what made you say, oh yeah, I want to do this?
Well, she has a lot of obstacles and challenges, and I was interested in exploring, is she going to be considered flawed and difficult and troubled, or is she trying to navigate her way through a flawed and difficult and troubled environment? Is she rebelling against a system that is ultimately flawed, and having been brought up in a political arena, she's aware of the corruption and the manipulation and the agendas and the difference between having a public persona to try and sell your brand and sell a set of ideals compared to what you're like at home, which is what she would have had experiencing her parents in that world. So for me, I thought this is great. This is a great exploration of someone who could be easily misunderstood and full of contradictions and makes a lot of mistakes. And can she still remain likable in some way? Can the audience still ultimately root for her? And how would I do that? So the new challenges of having something like that coming off someone who was I think so straight-laced, and morally we knew where she sat, which was Peggy Carter. It just gave me a whole new world to inhabit.
I can only imagine when you're going into a show like Agent Carter, more importantly, like a movie like Captain America, or you're doing this new show, there's high stakes in your life too. There's a need to really a real need to succeed here. Do you relate to the character in that way?
Yeah, I suppose so. I try not to engage with. When people say, "Oh, you must be under so much pressure, like it's got to do well, like you're the face of it. If it falls, you fall," and all this kind of stuff. And I just go, well, that, yes, potentially. And so I decided to kind of not involve myself in that conversation and just kind of focus on the work really at hand. And that makes me feel a lot freer. And that means that I can take risks, because I'm not limiting myself in thinking, you better not mess this up because this will be the end of the world and the end of your career. I love what I do. I feel very lucky. Every time I get a job, I'm kind of amazed that I've gotten another job.
You're amazed?
Well, yeah, because there is no certainty, and it can be a fickle business. I mean, I'm sure I could be a bit more into self-promotion, and I wince at it. I'm bad at it. I think it doesn't sit well with me. It's kind of an English thing, I suppose. It's a hard minefield to negotiate.
It's challenging. I have friends of mine who are actors in Los Angeles, and they say that they feel like they need to have selfies on Instagram. They need to have a lot of self-promotion just in order to get roles these days.
Oh, I don't feel that. I do believe that talent will out eventually, even if it means losing out on jobs because someone's been chosen because of their Instagram following. That tends to be not there for a job I'd want to take in the first place, that they're going on that popularity and the celebrity rather than someone who would tell the story in the best way for the audience, and I think that can be risky because it potentially dumbs down the story, and I kind of would love to do jobs that it kind of stimulate me and make me feel like I've learned something and I've challenged myself, and in turn have created a story that engages people and causes a conversation rather than something that helps them fall asleep at night.
That feeling that the work is the most important, though,
Yeah.
that what you're doing at the end of the day is the work and not the self-promotion and not the celebrity. It does parallel, or it does relate to that story about you that Miramax told you to maybe lose some weight for one of your roles, and Emma Thompson told you that you're not a model, you're an actor. Can you tell me more about that?
It was, the press loved that as a headline. It was such a small, insignificant thing, but mainly the point that Emma was making that I think is brilliant, and I think all girls should hold on to, is that if you want to work in this industry as an actor, you are an actor. Your point is how well you tell a story and how expressive you can be within your body and within your facial expressions and your tone of voice to convey a character. And that has always got to be, for me, the core, the point of it. And the obsession with how one looks can make for very dull conversation, and it can also be quite isolating, and it's just not something that's ever interested me. And and Emma's kind of, she's a national treasure, and she is brilliant and bright and interesting and engaging and complicated and funny and bizarre and outrageous and all the things that from someone coming out of drama school I just thrived being around, because she helped kind of give me the confidence to develop who I am as a person.
We're talking a lot today about expectations, the expectations placed on your character, expectations placed on women in film, expectations placed on all of us.
Yeah.
And as a child, you obviously had some big expectations of yourself, because I heard, is this true? I heard that you wrote letters to your future self.
I was mental, yes.
And you still read them.
No, not that I still read them. I read once. So my mother, on my 21st birthday, gave me a letter I'd written when I was to myself when I was 8 years old. And when I was 8, the letter was about kind of, I was obsessed with my future self. I think I kind of felt like I was born at the age of 40, and now I'm just getting younger and more immature as the years go by.
Like a Benjamin Button.
Yeah, it's a Benjamin Button situation.
Right.
And I was a very serious kid. I was quite introverted. I loved telling stories, but I didn't want anyone to be around to see them. I'd tell them to my teddies because they couldn't judge me or talk back. So it's weird that I'd involved myself in a world where you need an audience. Actors need an audience. It's a conversation between the performer and the people receiving that story. The letters are kind of mental. I mean, I think that luckily I've calmed down back into the present moment a little bit more than when I was a kid. I mean, I wanted so much to be part of that world, and when I'd go to the theatre and the lights would go down and a group of strangers would go on this kind of imaginary journey, independent of the lives that we had come from. And I found that there was something quite ritualistic and magical about it. And I just wanted in. I wanted to be part of it. I didn't know how to do it. I had no contacts. I didn't even think, still don't think I'm particularly talented.
Hold on. You don't think you're particularly talented?
Oh God, no! No! Ooh, no! I'm not. No.
No.
No. I'm an apprentice. I do feel I've got a lot to learn, and I learn from everyone that I work with. And as time goes by, I'm aware of how much more there is to learn, and how nothing ever feels complete. And
do you feel like you're ever going to get to a point where you're like, I got it now?
No, never. I think I might as well give up once that happens.
I got to go back to these letters because is there a letter you haven't opened yet? There's the common trope of the person reading the letter that the childhood you has written, and it says, I bet you're already the doctor by now. I bet you're already president, and you probably are in the Oval Office drinking lemonade right now, and you're reading it, and you're in Dunkin' Donuts, you're not feeling so good about yourself. Are there letters you haven't opened? Do you have trepidation when you open them?
I can't remember. I think there might be one for when I eventually turned 40. I think I suspect.
There's a
and I don't know what
Hayley at 40 letter.
There might be. But I think that I was quite a sensitive kid, and in the letter that I wrote to my 21-year-old self, I was like, if there's any aspect of your life that you're unhappy with, know that you have the power to change it. And that was much better.
How old were you when you wrote these letters?
Like 8. And it started off going, do you have, are you married with the kids, and have you written your first novel yet? And it was ambitious, but it was more of like who I developed as a person. Like, I hope that you've got the skills to be able to take yourself out of environments that cause you pain, and it was all quite empowering. I was like, wow, whoever that 8-year-old kid is, I wish I was her, because I don't feel like that at all now.
So maybe that's the last question. Maybe that's how we'll end. And this has been a lot of fun, by the way.
Oh, good.
But
yeah.
let me ask this question: If Hayley now could write Hayley at 8 a letter to say, hey, here's how things are going, or here's some lessons I've learned.
She'd go, what would she say?
Yeah.
She'd say, put the pot noodle down and go and play with people your own age and relax. I think I forced myself to kind of grow. I was a serious kid, and I really forced myself to kind of grow up really quickly, because I really wanted to get out there, and I wanted to be part of the world. And there is, and I do often feel when I speak to young actors as well, who are even in their teens, or they're thinking about leaving school to pursue their career, I'm just like, just wait, please, just enjoy your life. This is not just a normal 9-to-5 job that has certain holidays per year, and if you work long enough, you might be promoted to that, and in 40 years' time you can retire on this. It doesn't work that way. And I think therefore you have to have a strong sense of self that becomes your foundation, because you're essentially living a nomadic life if you're lucky enough to get consistent work. And so I think that I would say to her, just enjoy being 8.
Still to come on Q, Moonlight director Barry Jenkins joins me.
No, you gonna listen.
To who, Ma?
I approached this story as an ally. I'm a straight black man.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like I'm an ally to LGBTQ causes.
But first, a performance and chat with Sam Roberts Band.
Another day, try to get it right.
We're going to play a song called Fiend. Fiend is basically a story of two people trying to share their life together.
Anyone you know?
Maybe my wife, yeah.
Songs for warm summer nights, cross-country road trips. That's what you get from the Sam Roberts Band. Sam and the guys have delivered hook-filled rock and roll records time after time. You might remember Don't Walk Away, Eileen. You might remember Brother Down. And they're back with another one, Terraform. They dropped by Studio Q to play some songs off of it, and they kick things off with this performance of Fiend in our new Q recording studio.
Fiend is basically a story of two people trying to share their life together through all the thick and thin of it.
Anyone you know?
Maybe my wife, yeah.
Another day, try to get it right, find a way through the fight. In the meantime, keep your shit tight on the bread line, keep your spirits high.
We've been together for 25 years, and we've been through a lot together.
I won't give you up. I'm a thief of jealousy, almost lifeline.
You think about the past and you think about today, but you're also trying to look ahead to what you have to enjoy with each other in the future as well.
I'm sure you've heard before. You think I'm but you know what I wanted. Wanna let go, but I'm haunted. I'm a lost cause, baby, and I can't stop seeking, but I still want more. In a free fall, baby, 'cause I can't stop thinking about everything I had before. Yeah, turn your back on love and cry. Wherever you be in my heart and on my mind. Throw your mind back again.
Sometimes, walking into the studio and trying to make a new record, and even after a number of records, I mean, sometimes it still seems like you're brand new, but it's been a while. Is it still kind of scary when you walk in there and try to make something new?
It's all the same for the rich and the poor. I know where to find you, and I don't need to find you.
I really enjoyed the songwriting process so much that as much as you sort of scratch your head and say, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
How does this start? Where's the beginning? What's the first word that I'm going to write on this page? Or what's the first note that I'm going to record? You kind of realize after a while that you just flick on the machine and go and see.
How it's gonna stay, never gonna fade, never gonna fade, no way. Everything we say, everything we gave up, everything we paid for.
What's the machine?
The machine. The machine is the machine in your brain, I guess. Whatever it is.
Is that kind of thing you just go in there and say, right,
Just go,
songwriting time?
Just go and press record and see what comes out. You learn to trust your instincts. Does it make you feel good? When you're writing something, does it make you feel good? If it makes you feel good, well, pursue it a little bit further. See what doors it opens.
Yeah.
And maybe if you find yourself a dead end, then don't be afraid to kind of go back and say, well, I was barking up the wrong tree. I'm gonna go another way with this.
If you fall apart, don't let the venom leave you beating hard. It takes a lifetime to know who you are. Feel the sunshine, I'm a black star. In love forever. It's all the same for the rich and the poor. I know where to find you, and I don't need to remind you. I'm a lost cause, baby, and I can't stop seeking, but I still want more. In a free fall, baby, 'cause I can't stop thinking about everything I had before. You're the queen of the South Pass, coming out swinging, and I'm still coming back for more. In a free fall, baby, 'cause I can't stop thinking about everything I had before. Never turn your back on love, it's a crime. Forever you'll be in my heart and on my mind. Never turn your back on love, it's a crime. Forever you'll be in my heart and on my mind.
Coming up, more music from Sam Roberts' band.
We were singing, if you want it, well, you're gonna have to take it from me.
But first, I talked to A Tribe Called Red about their latest record, We Are the Hallucination.
I think the Hallucination is just a group of like-minded people that all want change.
2016 has been a massive year for Indigenous art in this country, whether it's Joseph Boyden, Tanya Tagaq, or my next guests at Tribe Called Red. The electronic dance meets powwow group is really having a moment right now.
We are the Halusa Nation.
Their latest record, We Are the Hallucination, is a triumphant success and has broken down a door to the mainstream. On it, they collaborate with a diamond list of artists. Yassine Bey, a.k.a. Mos Def, The Narcissist, Tanya Tagaq, Shad, and so many more. They drop by to talk about the record, but as sometimes happens with good conversations, the interview ended up taking its own path. You'll see what I mean.
Does this feel like a real watershed moment in Indigenous pop culture?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like, this has never happened before.
Yeah.
You know.
What do you think sparking it?
The conversation and like the with Idle No More, it seemed like a big reawakening or reaffirming that Indigenous people are here. Like when they did that, when they put together the round dances during, you know, the busiest consumer time of the year at Christmas and took up these consumer spaces and just sang and just to say like, we're still here. You need to remember that, like we're still around.
The big difference is the willingness of people to listen outside of the Indigenous community. We've had these talented artists for decades. We've had these people trying to work for change for decades, but we've been largely talking within our own community, within people who were already sympathetic or on the same side.
Well, what sparked that change, you think?
That I really don't know. Like it's something that's amazing me every day right now, you know, and I mean, you're seeing it in arts, I think, first. You know, you kind of look at arts for a barometer in that sort of department. And 20 years ago, people outside the Indigenous community weren't paying attention to Indigenous art. And something's happened. I mean, you were seeing it with like Tanya and Buffy winning Polaris prizes. You're seeing it in people being interested in a group like us that are remixing powwow music. You know, so we're bringing this whole other thing that people weren't exposed to at all. That you would think that they would be, being that that's the music of this land.
I'm wondering, Bear, like what does this mean to you personally?
Personally, it's hope. It's a huge amount of hope. You know, I was really raised with the idea that things were going to get a lot worse before they got better. You know, and that idea has been with me since I was a little kid. So I've always been waiting for how bad is it going to get before it gets better. People just, you know, turning on their own brains, wanting to learn more, wanting to listen, being open to learning new ideas, and you know, in a way that I don't think was present before.
Yeah, I think that has to do with like social media specifically and being able to tell our own stories that way. Like it was Will Smith, I think, that said like, "Yo, the violence isn't new. The violence has always been here. The cameras are new." I think it's social media.
Well, no, I don't know what the difference is in people's thinking. There's a difference in people's thinking that's changed.
Right, and I'm saying that spark and that change in people's thinking came from social media. Yo, my change in thinking came from social media.
That's your experience. I don't think that's everybody's experience.
Right, and like people.
And again, you're an Indigenous person. We're talking about listening to Indigenous issues.
People. Yeah.
Right? So
absolutely.
So there's a difference in the way that people are willing to take in, listen to, and interact with Indigenous culture that wasn't there. Whether or not we had social media isn't going to change whether or not people are willing to interact.
Yes, it does. I think it does because the exposure's out there more. Like we're out there. We don't need a label anymore to push our ideas. We don't need media to push our ideas anymore. We can have these conversations and interact.
But those things were being talked about and portrayed within media 20 years ago. But people weren't as interested in interacting with those issues.
But if people don't know about it, they can't change. They wouldn't know about it.
But all you have to do is look to know about it. The difference is the extent comes from people's interest outside of the community.
And I'm saying that interest is peaked because it's being put on the forefront because of social media.
Well, no, okay, I see what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that change in people's thought isn't coming because of the social media. The social media is helping amplify that, but there's a change in people's thinking that's going on. It's not being created by social media. Social media is a tool that's being used to help it.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It's not That's not the change.
It's spreading the consciousness
The change
that you're
is coming
talking about.
from someplace else. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not willing to say I know where that change is coming from. That's my question.
This is what I'm observing, and I'm seeing
Right,
like the big
I'm
change.
saying I'm listening to what you're observing, and I'm saying I don't agree that that's where the change is coming from.
Right.
But like, let's talk about like social media and just the idea of hashtags as a movement.
But I want to talk about what the movement's leading towards. Like I'm so, I think it's so awesome to hear that this conversation is happening within the band. Like
we discuss ideas like this all the time.
that there's you guys are also trying to figure out how and why this is happening.
And I think that we don't know. And that's the thing. And it's
that's
cool
the
and
thing,
it's cool
exactly.
and it's cool to not know. It's cool not to know, but we can understand and we can come up with different ways. I think that like not one person's right, and there's not one right way to do everything, and there's not one right way of like what it is.
Yeah.
But there's definitely wins. Like social media is definitely a win. It's definitely a win. But is it the reason why? We don't know. We have an educated guess.
Let's look at these
for
focus
sure.
points. Like
no, I understand.
The major revolutions that have been going on. They're all hashtags. Black Lives Matter, I don't know more, Arab Spring, like they're hashtags. You can't tell me that social media isn't helping this consciousness.
Oh, no. I'm not saying it's not helping.
Where the change, they're saying that that's not where the change is happening.
Yeah.
Saying it's a tool of change, but that's not where the change in people's thinking has happened.
So
it's definitely helped. It's definitely helped.
But I want to talk about the goal that it leads towards, and I want to talk about the record before you guys have to go. I want to talk about the hallucination. No, man, don't be. This is. I had no intention of ever stopping that. It's a beautiful conversation to see that not only are things happening, but we're also struggling with the idea of why things are happening, along with the gratitude that it is. And I can say that sure, I've read social media and I've found out about things. I'm from Newfoundland, and the social media coverage of what's happening in Muskrat Falls has provoked my interest in Muskrat Falls. But Bear, to your point, I'll say that also, like, I don't remember thinking about Labrador in the same way when I was 6 or 7 that I do right now. I think there's a mixture of both your points happening, but I want to lead that towards the hallucination, which is kind of the thesis statement, which is kind of the modus operandi of the record, and I'm hoping you can tell me what the hallucination is.
Wow. I think the hallucination is just a group of like-minded people, like that all want change and all want.
So it's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah. In a way, it's like
it's the result of what we're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Now, in Canada, the hardest thing to have between Indigenous people and settler people is a conversation on equal ground without anger and malice. It's just trying to find the space to have that is almost impossible. As soon as you start talking about Indigenous issues, it attacks the base of what is the myth of Canada.
Just on that idea of myth of Canada, I found out recently there was an archaeologist on my res I was hanging out, and he had this timeline and showed me how long, I'm from Nipissing, Lake Nipissing, how long the Nipissing Ojibwe people have been living on this lake, and it's 13,000 years. We've been living, like my mom still lives on that lake for 13,000 years. Now, what do you think about that 150-year idea of Canada? Okay, so as we were following the receding ice caps, like there was trees that had to come, and those trees eventually came after we were there because it was under like ice for thousands of years, right? So we were living on that lake before maple trees showed up. So let's talk about this myth.
What's 150 years?
Let's talk about this myth of Canada.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's talk about and if you're going to learn this history of this country, and your stories only go back 150 years, like we need to talk about that.
This has been so great, guys. Thank you so much for coming in and having this conversation. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
When Q continues, Sam Roberts' band has another performance for us.
If you want it, well, you're gonna have to give me something. If you want it, well, I need to know what's in it for me.
But first, Barry Jenkins sits down to talk about his latest film, Moonlight.
No, you gonna listen.
To who, Ma?
Love can be difficult, and it can be difficult for people to accept it.
Oh, man, you beat me to it. That was my line, man.
What films come to mind when you think about Hollywood's portrayal of intimacy between men? You think about frat boy movies like Animal House and Old School, romance films like The Hangover and Superbad.
Hey, don't touch that,
I'm
okay?
not a piece of meat.
The problem with any of these films is that they can be sometimes sexist. They can be sometimes homophobic. Sometimes you can feel when you're watching it that it lacks any real emotional depth.
Chica, yeah.
Oh, and you know what? They're mainly about white guys, too.
We're going streaking!
Pickings get way worse when you start thinking about Hollywood's track record with black male characters. Which brings me to a new film called Moonlight. It's about one black man's struggle with his masculinity and sexuality during 3 critical periods in his life.
What you looking at me like that for?
1, as a bullied child. 2, as a disillusioned teen. And finally, 3, as a love-torn adult.
At some point, you gotta decide for yourself who you're gonna be. Can't let nobody make that decision for you.
It is one of the most powerful and poignant films I have ever seen in my entire life. And if the early Oscar buzz around this movie is any indication, it might just be one of the most important explorations of black masculinity we've seen, which is why it's great to be joined by Moonlight director Barry Jenkins in Studio Q.
When you read the reviews of this film, I mean, they're overall really, really positive, but I noticed in each one, there seems to be a different perspective on what the film is actually about.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering from your perspective, if you could just tell us as the director of this film, what do you think the film's about?
I think it's about multiple things, and so I think it's a good thing that different people are seeing different thematic issues, different themes in the film, because I think what's happening is people are bringing things to the film, and the film is like this reflection, and so not everybody's going to get the same thing out of it. For me, it's a coming-of-age story about this very particular neighborhood that I'm from in Miami, that the playwright Jerome McCraney is from, but it's also about the idea of masculinity, and then about the performance of masculinity. I would say it's about anything. It's about how this sort of conversation of nature versus nurture, and how people can begin to perform what they think the world is expecting of them.
So I want to go a bit deeper in the film. Moonlight is based around a character named Chiron. You see him at 3 stages in his life. First, he's a little child. Then he becomes sort of a frustrated teenager, a bullied teenager. And then you see him as sort of a hardened adult. So what is it not just about him, but about his journey that fascinated you?
One, I like the idea, masculinity, male masculinity, black male masculinity. These are very esoteric terms, I wanted to see those things represented in flesh and blood, you know? And I wanted to see somebody go through the evolution of this process. So this idea of nurture versus nature can actually be tested, with flesh and blood actors, enacting, these, what I felt like were very visceral scenes. And I like the idea that, we cast 3 different actors to play the part at each age. And and the adult story, this guy Trevante Rhodes, who's like an ex, 100-meter track athlete. The guy runs like a 10, 200 meters. He's very rocked up and big. And in the first story, we have this little kid who loves to dance, and perform as Michael Jackson. And to look into this grown man's eyes and still be able to see that child, to me, it would be, again, like instead of making it an intellectual discussion of the performance of masculinity, we could actually show it, that this person begins as one thing and then to survive in the world, builds up this literal musculature, this armature, to protect himself from having to deal, with being vulnerable.
That musculature is one of the more fascinating things about the whole movie that you take away. So if you haven't seen it, so in the beginning of the film, Chiron is, again, this skinny, kind of vulnerable kid. And by the end of the film, he's jacked. He's huge. And he just got out of jail not too long from when you see him. That's a really big contrast. Can you talk a little bit more about how deliberate that contrast was and what's to be represented by the physical transformation of the character?
I wanted it to be very jarring for the audience, Like literally that this person has physically become someone else. And I wanted it to be represented as an attempt, literally, to erase himself, I like to think of the movie as a character who's retreating within himself, And so he's putting up, like literally just building up this firmament, arming himself. And the idea is, the world is not going to see me anymore. I'm going to show the world what I want to be seen of me. And yet at the same time, I wanted to do it in a certain way where you have that initial reaction, and then over the course of the third story, you start to realize you're looking at the same person. And you're witnessing somebody trying to bury themselves. But none of us can really truly do that, At our core, we're always going to be that person that That's the essence of us.
There's so many powerful moments in the movie, and we don't have a whole lot of time, so I want to get to a couple of them. One in particular that's really affecting is Chiron's first sexual experience. It's with his friend, Kevin. There's a lot going on here. I want to point out that most people so far haven't seen this film yet. So they're sitting on the beach. They're next to one another. They're kind of ribbing one another. They've just kind of smoked a joint, and then something kind of intimate happens. What were you trying to get across during that scene?
You know, that scene is, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's like, for me, like one of the most pivotal scenes in the film. You know, I approached this story as an ally. You know, I'm a straight black man. And yet I feel like I'm an ally to LGBTQ causes. And Terrell McCraney is a very out playwright, you know, and so I wanted to preserve his voice. And that scene is written in Terrell's voice. I don't have that first person perspective, and I think empathy can only get you so far, you know, and so having Terrell's voice and having his life experiences at the core of the piece and the source material was really important, and I wanted to nail that scene. It just had to be nailed. I think the whole movie spins on the idea of this transference, you know, of trust and emotion, and having someone allow you the space to embrace your identity. And I think in that scene, both those actors, they do it in such a delicate and sort of caring way that you can see, you know, the scene that happens next, you know, over the next 2 minutes where there's this huge betrayal, you know. It only works because that scene is just so genuinely intimate between those two actors.
But you, as a director, you had to make a choice because it's a largely implied scene. You know, it's not overly explicit, and you gave a lot of space to that scene. Was that something you did intentionally?
I did it intentionally because I wanted the sequence or that scene to have this not necessarily innocence, you know, but I wanted it to be positive. You know, I wanted it to be a positive first sexual experience. You know. I didn't want it to be like under cloak and dagger or there's this tension or things like that. I wanted it to be a very kind, caring scene because in the third story, those two characters reunite. And I think they reunite because something genuinely was transferred in that moment.
One thing I was struck by when I watched this film was kind of the different notions of how love is portrayed in this film. So without giving too much away, there's a complicated love between Chiron and his mother who's suffering from a drug addiction. Teresa, portrayed by Janelle Monáe, she's a neighbor. She loves him, even though she really doesn't have to. She loves him in the community. And then there's a third kind of love, the love he feels for Kevin, but which, when he gives out, Kevin then returns and then becomes quite violent afterwards. What did you want to say about love in this film?
I mean, exactly what you just said, bruh, that it takes many, many different forms, and it comes from unexpected places. The fourth love, I would say, is between Mahershala Ali's character, Juan, and Little in the first story, which is, you know, we open with this drug deal going on, and Ali is such a great actor. You know, he plays on House of Cards. It's this very smooth...
Remy.
He plays Remy Dan, this very smooth, debonair kind of guy. You know, then I've seen him in the film Kicks, where he's playing literally like a neighborhood hustler. You know, he can be evil one moment and he can be like an angel and the next. And I think that the trust, you know, and sort of like the caring that he shows for Little in the first story, I think it ripples throughout all the way to the end of this, the film, where Chiron, Black, has started to perform as Juan, but it's the wrong version.
Yeah, and again, without getting into individual specific scenes, it is also a meaning that love can be very complicated.
Exactly.
Love can be difficult, and it can be difficult for people to accept it.
Oh, man, you beat me to it. That was my line, man. No, because I think the whole thing for the character Black, Chiron, is that people are always projecting this love. I think he creates a version of himself where he feels like he's unworthy of that love.
Right.
You know? And he doesn't accept it. You know? He won't allow himself to accept it. Because if he does, all this armature he's built up, you know, it's going to come crumbling down, you know?
You said earlier in the interview something really interesting. You said that you approach this film as a straight black man, but yet you wanted to be an ally for the LGBTQ2 plus community.
An active ally. Because I think of, you know, when the marriage equality bill was passed by the Supreme Court in the U.S., you know, everybody put those rainbow filters on their Facebook, you know? To me, that's being a passive ally. You know, for me to have seen this story written by Terrell, and as a visual storyteller, already see a way to tell this story and not do it, you know, that would be me not taking on my responsibility as an active ally, which I think is much more useful.
So what are you hoping this film can do for other people's perceptions of black masculinity, of LGBT masculinity? What were you hoping to do with people's perceptions coming out of the theater?
You know, I just want people to maybe through these characters understand how the world can affect some of these kids who grew up in this community like Terrell and I did, you know, and how it can sort of like promote the idea of performing this version of masculinity that isn't truly who these men are, you know, and sometimes can lead you to become something that you aren't necessarily. The other part of it is, you know, people keep saying, "Oh, I've never seen a character like this. Or, I've never seen a story like this." And I'm like, "Oh, I know people who live through this stuff all the time. You know, we just don't see them represented in arts and letters very often." And what I would hope is if people are walking down the street and you see a guy with a mouth full of grills, or you see a dude who's like, you know, being really, really tough, you know, you kind of think, instead of just seeing that guy and judging him, oh, he came from somewhere, you know, there's a story. Maybe I can understand a little bit more of why he's that way. I can understand a little bit more of what he's going through. I can empathize with him, or at least make an attempt to.
Barry Jenkins, thanks so much for coming into the studio today to talk to us about this film, man.
Cool, thanks for having me.
We've got another performance by Sam Roberts Band still to come on Q.
It's a Satan-hating song.
It's a Satan-hating song, and you just hope that when you look at his beady little eyes, that you can find your way back to the world.
We're going to leave you today with another performance from the Sam Roberts Band, the Plaid Beard Ensemble, off their new album Terraform. Remember, for more performances, uncut interviews, and full episodes of QTV, pay us a visit at cbc.ca/Q. You can find us on Twitter at CBC Radio Q. I'm Tom Power. Later on.
It's a song that sort of started with the piano riff. At the beginning, I didn't know what it was going to be about. It turns out it's about somebody going to hell. As a good Catholic boy, you understand that very well.
I do, yeah. The constant fear every
Always
single
there.
day. No, I get it.
Yeah, it was born out of a fear of Satan.
Yeah, right. So if you're listening right now, Beelzebub, this is for you.
outside the law. I'm waiting for the afterthought.